This is section 1.3 using midpoint and distance formulas. So more vocabulary in this section. A midpoint is a point that divides a segment into two congruent segments. Okay, so it's the middle. It's the point in the middle of the segment. A segment bisector is a point, ray, line segment, or a plane, it can be any of those, that intersects a segment at its midpoint. So basically, what is cutting that segment in half? So let's identify the segment bisector first, and then I find the length of PQ. So identifying the segment bisector, what is cutting it in half? Okay, in this case, this ray is cutting segment PQ in half. So our segment bisector is ray MN. Make sure you use the correct notation when you're doing that. Then find the length of PQ. Well, if MN is a segment bisector, that means PM and MQ have to be the same. So if PM is 1 7/8, MQ is also 1 7/8. So all we have to do is we can either add those two together or multiply by 2. Personally, I multiply by 2. So I would take 15 over 8 times 2 over 1. I just changed 1 7/8 to an improper fraction. Multiplying fractions, reduce, this becomes a 1, this becomes a 4. So 15 over 4, which becomes 3 3/4. So PQ is 3 3/4. All right, let's make it a little harder and use some algebra. So if M is the midpoint of VW, find the length of segment VM. So in order to find the length of VM, we're going to need to know what X is. So we got to set up an equation using what we know. Well, we know that M is the midpoint, which means VM and MW have to be equal. So I'm going to write that 4x minus 1 is equal to 3x plus 3. All right, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides, and I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So these are going to go away, this is going to go away, so now I have 1x equals 4. I haven't answered the question yet, so I have to find the length of segment VM. Since VM equals 4x minus 1, I'm going to substitute in 4 for x because that's what we found out. So 4 times 4 minus 1, that's 16 minus 1, which is equal to 15. So segment VM equals 15. If you're given 2 points on a graph and you need to find the midpoint, this is the formula. So to find the x-coordinate, you add the x's together and divide by 2. And to find the y-coordinate, you add the y's together and divide by 2. Basically what you're doing is you're taking an average of the x values and an average of the y values. So let's find the midpoint of A, B, where A is negative 4, 8, and B is 2, 10. So to find the x value, we take negative 4 plus 2 divided by 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2 divided by 2, which gives us negative 1. Y, we're going to take 8 plus 10 divided by 2, which is 18 divided by 2, which is 9. So the midpoint is negative 1, 9. Make sure you write it as a point. And the last thing to learn for today is the distance formula. So how do we find the distance between 2 points? It's really easy if a segment is horizontal or vertical because we can just count on the graph. But if it's not, we have to use the distance formula. So what this comes from is this comes from the Pythagorean theorem. So we learned a while ago that the Pythagorean theorem is x squared plus, or actually, let's go on how it usually is. So the Pythagorean theorem says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. In this case, when we look for the diagonal, we're always looking for c. So I'm going to rearrange a little bit and solve. C is the square root of a squared plus b squared. So this x2 minus x1 is what a is. And then this y2 minus y1 is what b is. So what we're doing is we're basically doing the Pythagorean theorem. So let's try it on an example. Find the distance between j, -8, 0, and k, 1, 4. So distance equals, just going to draw a big square root. If you have to, go back and look at what the distance formula is. So I'm going to take x2, which is 1, minus -8, which is x1 squared, plus y2 is 4, minus y1 is 0 squared. So we have the square root 1 minus -8, that's 9. So we have 9 squared plus 4 minus 0 is 4 squared. 9 squared is 81. 4 squared is 16. So we get the square root of 97. If you want to leave it as the square root of 97, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, you can use a calculator, probably round to, let's say, 2 decimals. So that's it for the midpoint and distance.